Poverty is one of the biggest challenges facing countries around the world. Millions of people struggle with low incomes, limited opportunities, and the daily fight to make ends meet. When you look at it, so many problems seem to come down to one thing: not having enough money. So that raises a simple question. Why don't governments just print more money? If everyone has more cash, wouldn't everyone become richer and happier? It sounds like the perfect solution, but as logical as it seems, that's not how an economy works. In this video, we're going to answer one important question. Why don't governments just print more money? To understand the answer, we first need to understand what actually happens when more money is printed. If you ask your parents or your teachers, they'll probably tell you that it causes inflation. But what exactly is inflation? Inflation happens when prices rise because there's more money in the economy, but the amount of goods and services stays the same. To understand why, we need to look at one of the most basic rules of economics: supply and demand. When supply is high and demand is low, prices usually fall. But when supply is low and demand is high, prices rise. That's inflation. And when inflation becomes completely out of control, it's called hyperinflation. Let's make this easy to understand with a simple example. Imagine that a loaf of bread costs $5. Bob, John, Alex, Jack, and Tony each have exactly $5. There are only 5 loaves of bread available. That means each person can buy 1 loaf for $5. Simple enough. Now imagine the government prints more money and gives everyone an extra $5. Suddenly, Bob, John, Alex, Jack, and Tony each have $10. But there's still one problem. There are still only 5 loaves of bread. Now everyone wants to buy 2 loaves instead of 1. Unfortunately, the bakery can't magically double its production overnight. The owner notices that customers are competing for the same bread and realizes they're willing to pay more. So the bakery raises the price from $5 to $10 per loaf. After all, making a bigger profit is normal human behavior. What happens next? Bob, John, Alex, Jack, and Tony still end up buying just 1 loaf each. The only difference is that now they pay $10 instead of $5. Did anyone actually become richer? No. They simply have more money chasing the exact same amount of bread. Nothing about the real economy changed. Now you might think the bakery became richer. At first, it does make more money, but the story doesn't end there. Since every bakery now has more money, they all want to buy more wheat so they can bake more bread. The problem is that wheat has to be grown, and farmland is limited. Farmers can't instantly produce more wheat. As bakeries compete for the limited supply, the price of wheat rises. Now bakeries have higher production costs. To maintain their profits, they raise bread prices even more. The cycle continues. This is why printing more money without increasing the production of goods and services leads to inflation. Prices go up, the purchasing power of money goes down, and in the end, people aren't actually better off. So simply printing more money doesn't solve economic problems. Now, after hearing all of that, you might be thinking, that sounds like a terrible idea. Surely no country would actually do this. Well, several countries have, and the results were disastrous. Let's look at some of the most famous examples. Number 1, the Weimar Republic, 1920s. After Germany lost World War I, the German Empire collapsed during a revolution, and the Weimar Republic became the country's new government. Germany was devastated. Its infrastructure was in ruins. The economy had collapsed. Unemployment was widespread. On top of that, the Allied powers imposed massive war reparations under the Treaty of Versailles. These harsh conditions also fueled resentment, including from a failed Austrian painter who would later change the course of history. With little money and enormous debts, the government made a desperate decision. It started printing money, lots of it. The result was one of the worst cases of hyperinflation in history. By November 1923, prices were doubling every few hours. People carried wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy everyday necessities. A loaf of bread that cost 250 marks in January 1923 exploded to around 200 billion marks by November of the same year. People's life savings became worthless almost overnight. The economic collapse fueled widespread social unrest and helped create the conditions that led to the rise of that same Austrian painter. Number 2, Zimbabwe, 2007. Zimbabwe, formerly known as Rhodesia, had previously been governed under a system of white minority rule. After independence, Robert Mugabe became the country's president. Determined to reverse colonial-era land ownership, his government redistributed farmland from white landowners to black farmers. However, many of the new farmers lacked the experience and training needed to maintain agricultural production. As food production dropped, unemployment rose, the economy weakened, and international sanctions added even more pressure. Facing mounting financial problems, the government began printing money to cover its expenses. Instead of fixing the economy, it made everything worse. By 2008, Zimbabwe's annual inflation rate reached an almost unimaginable 89.7 sextillion%. That's 89.7 followed by 20 zeros. The Zimbabwean dollar became practically worthless. People had to carry enormous stacks of cash just to buy basic groceries. Prices could double within a single day, or even within a matter of hours. Number 3. Venezuela, 2016. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves in the world, even larger than Saudi Arabia's. For years, high oil prices made Venezuela one of the wealthiest countries in the region. Oil exports brought in huge amounts of money, but instead of using that wealth to diversify the economy and develop other industries, the government became heavily dependent on oil revenue. The socialist government expanded subsidies, controlled many industries, regulated prices, and limited the growth of private businesses. As long as oil prices stayed high, the system appeared to work. Then everything changed. After 2008, global oil prices dropped sharply. Because Venezuela relied so heavily on oil, government income collapsed. Corruption, weak tax revenue, and economic mismanagement made the crisis even worse. Cutting subsidies would have been politically unpopular, so instead the government printed more money to keep paying for them. The result was hyperinflation. Prices skyrocketed. The Venezuelan currency lost almost all of its value. At one point, banknotes became so worthless that people threw them away because they couldn't buy anything. Venezuela showed that even a country with enormous natural resources can suffer economic disaster if it relies on printing money instead of creating real economic value. And these aren't the only examples. Countries like Hungary and Yugoslavia also experienced devastating hyperinflation after printing excessive amounts of money. The lesson is clear. Printing more money may sound like an easy solution to poverty or economic hardship, but it doesn't create real wealth. It simply makes existing money worth less. People want money because it allows them to buy the things they need. But imagine having billions of dollars when there's only one loaf of bread. Or worse, no bread at all. In the end, you can't eat money. Without goods and services to buy, money becomes meaningless. At this point, you might have another question. Why doesn't a government print money only to repay its foreign debt instead of giving it to its own citizens? The answer is trust. When a country prints large amounts of money, financial markets, investors, and foreign governments notice. Economic reports, inflation data, and currency markets quickly reveal what's happening. Even if the newly printed money is used only to pay foreign debt, the total money supply still increases. That weakens the value of the country's currency. Foreign lenders don't want to be repaid with money that's rapidly losing value. If they lose confidence in the currency, they'll demand higher interest rates, stricter lending conditions, or they may stop lending altogether. That damages the country's financial reputation and long-term economic stability. So what's the real solution? Instead of creating more money, governments need to create more value. That means investing in education, building infrastructure, supporting technology, encouraging businesses, improving productivity, and managing the economy responsibly. When businesses produce more goods and services, supply increases. If supply grows alongside demand, prices remain much more stable. As businesses expand, they hire more workers. More people earn incomes. More products become available. And because people work to earn their money, they tend to spend it more carefully. At the same time, businesses can't simply charge whatever they want because competition keeps prices under control. Consumers have choices. Businesses have to compete. Everyone benefits. This is one of the reasons countries like Japan and South Korea were able to build strong, prosperous economies. Real wealth doesn't come from printing money. It comes from producing more value. If you'd like a deeper explanation of inflation and how it affects your daily life, I'll cover it in another video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.